Thanks so much, Heather. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Unleash AI's Potential, 5 Practical Strategies for Year-End Fundraising Success. As I'm sure you all are aware, the AI buzz is everywhere. We are just scratching the surface when it comes to discovering the possibilities of its uses. While aspects of AI are quite complex, there are many ways for all of us to utilize its capabilities. For nonprofits specifically, where there's always so much to do and never enough time, AI can be a big help. So today we'll take a very practical approach to show you how to leverage AI to save time and raise more this end of year giving season. Hi, my name is Tara Peitzer. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Giveffect. I have over 10 years of marketing and communications experience with a focus on applying emerging technologies to yield results. I have also volunteered for several nonprofit organizations throughout my life, as well as held leadership positions. I'm joined today by my colleague, Jack Harrison. Jack?
Hey everyone, glad to be here today. As Tara mentioned, my name is Jack Harrison. I am the manager of our client success team at Giveffect. Over 5 years experience working with nonprofits of all shapes and sizes with their tech needs, onboarding, training, everything in between. And so very much look forward to applying some of these today, as Tara led at the top in terms of AI and some year-end fundraising strategies. Very much look forward to helping you guys reach your goals, given the current state of play here. Okay, just a quick review of the agenda here at the top. We'll actually tell you a little bit more for maybe those that aren't familiar what we do here at Giveffect. We'll then jump into the state of philanthropy, what's the current backdrop of what we're seeing out of the industry. We're going to give an overview on AI because we certainly don't want to assume that everyone on the call here today knows exactly what we're talking about. So we're going to go through some terms, things to know together so that we all can at least start from the same page. We're going to bust some myths. AI is growing in popularity and everyone's learning about it extremely quickly. And so there's a lot of info out there. We're going to try to synthesize that down for you all and bust some of those myths. After that, we'll transition into our 5 practical strategies for year-end fundraising. We'll have a checklist for you at the end to try and help summarize things. Think about the next steps maybe that you and your teams can take in the near future. And then we will leave time absolutely for some Q&A at the end. Feel free to ask your questions in the chat throughout, but we'll likely get to those at the end. So thank you in advance for anybody who reaches out. Okay, so just a little bit about us at Giveffect. We are a 10-in-1 nonprofit software system, and as you all well know, many nonprofits use separate systems to accomplish what they need. You have your CRM or your central database, then you have your separate events management tools, your email marketing tools, and so on, right? At Giveffect, we are all-in-one, so you can manage the majority of your nonprofit needs all in one place. So we aren't just a CRM like other nonprofit tech you all may be familiar with out there. The point is, you don't have to have all of those different systems or silos in your tech stack. You could have one centralized place and get that 360-degree view of your various donors, volunteers, constituents, again, all in one fell swoop. And so what you're seeing on screen here is just many of the areas that we currently work in. And just to mention, smart automation will certainly speak to some of that today. Giveffect is an ever-evolving tool with things like the lab and the AI writer, which we'll come and talk about later today. We'll also include some information here at the end if anybody interested in chatting more with our team. That being said, so what is the current state of philanthropy here? We know it's been a tough time for folks in a few different ways. So just to kind of set the backdrop. Per a Giving USA report, we know that giving is down 3%, and then down even further after factoring in recent inflation. Also, in terms of the number of donors, total number of donors is in fact going down. However, the average gift size is going up. Since, while inflation has decreased considerably, it is still, of course, a major factor in donors' minds, and of course, as your minds as nonprofits, as we approach the end of this calendar year. So, given this backdrop, a central question we want to try to answer with you all here today is, how can AI help nonprofits engage more donors and raise more this end of year giving season? So with the opportunity of using this new and rapidly evolving technologies for your nonprofit, we're happy to guide the conversation for you here today. But like I said in the agenda, we'll want to establish some terms, right? So we're all on the same page. With that, Tara, take it away.
Great, thanks so much, Jack. So what is AI? AI stands for artificial intelligence. It is a simulation of human intelligence by machines. This includes learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, language understanding, and decision making. Next slide. So under the big umbrella of the term artificial intelligence, you will find machine learning and predictive analytics, which involves training algorithms on data sets to learn from data and make predictions. Then a subset of machine learning is deep learning, which uses neural networks to analyze large data sets and recognize intricate patterns. Then there is computer vision, which enables machines to interpret and understand visual information from images and videos. And generative AI, which many of you are probably most familiar with, which involves machines creating original content such as text, images, and music. Next slide. So today we're going to focus on machine learning and predictive analytics and generative AI.
Okay, so time to bust up some myths. Like we said, we know AI might seem a little magical at times. It's new on the scene, but there are some considerations we would want you all to be mindful of. One, what's the myth? That AI is always accurate. Certainly not. Certainly not always accurate. Many tools can even generate false information. Folks term this as hallucinations. Tools like ChatGPT, for instance, we'll certainly speak more to in a moment. Why might that be? AI tools like ChatGPT are language models that, put very, very simply, are trying to predict the next word based off of previous information and what best fits. It isn't necessarily doing a fact check. That said, tools like ChatGPT can provide sources by users like you if requested. Their current model is trained on information up to 2021. And these models are being trained by human information simply available out there on the internet. So we don't necessarily know, right, where all of this data is coming from when generating a response to any of your various prompts. Another one here is that, yeah, you guys can absolutely share any and all information with AI tools. Wrong, not correct. Some considerations you should certainly keep in mind here is you want to avoid sharing any personal identifying information. Perhaps any proprietary information about your company or different organizations you're working with, and certainly secure information like passwords. You'll absolutely want to refrain from sharing any of that kind of info with these tools. Now, it still remains to be seen also how secure certain AI platforms are. Legislation in many developed countries, including the United States, are relatively scant, and adoption of guidance or other regulations could be slow moving. It's a landscape that's changing, but this is something that we should all be monitoring as these AI tools continue to grow in their skill set and their popularity. Another myth, maybe you guys have heard this the most, is AI will replace my job. Now, possibly, but honestly, more realistically, in the near future and even the distant future, it'll merely change how you all do your job, not replace your job. By leveraging these different emerging technologies, you'll be able to accomplish more faster. These can be used to increase the productivity of your team, which in turn could actually lead to even more opportunities for the overall growth of your nonprofit organization at the end of the day. And these tools are not yet at a stage where they can replace all of the roles and responsibilities that a nonprofit professional executes on a day-by-day basis. Again, it's only in these certain instances, things like generative AI we'll talk about today, where again, it's meant to assist you. So don't worry, the robots aren't coming for you here. And then just a final myth to dispel, to bust here with you all today, is that you have to be an expert to use AI. Get that out of your head. The AI revolution is very much in its infancy. We need to always be learning as professionals. I certainly wouldn't consider myself an expert in this regard, so I'm continuing to learn. But many of these AI tools are fairly simple in their design, so it is certainly not the case that any of y'all will need to, say, be learning any particularly challenging new skills, such as coding, for instance. In short, no one is a consummate expert on all of these different features. Again, we're all students at the end of the day, and we're going to continue to follow these developments together in AI, so we can all use them to their greatest potential individually and for the teams that we're working with them.
So now you're probably asking yourself, how do I even get started? Using AI doesn't mean that you completely abandon your current processes or tech stack. Instead, leverage and integrate AI with your more traditional and other emerging technologies to achieve your goals more efficiently. Whether you use an all-in-one software like Giveffect that has some AI tools built right in, which we'll get to in a few, or if you're using many separate tools, this slide here is a visualization of your new nonprofit tech stack. What you can see here is AI can plug right in. So you see here on the left, the visualization of AI. On the right, you have your more traditional nonprofit technologies that you use on a daily basis. Again, this could be part of your all-in-one system, or you may have separate systems. Either way, AI can plug right in to help small teams and teams who are looking to do more in less time. And in the context of year-end fundraising that is quickly approaching, now is the time to incorporate AI into your nonprofit tech stack. So now let's dive right into the 5 practical ways AI strategies can be used for year-end fundraising success. First up, we have segmentation for personalization. Donors have unique motivations, interests, and giving capacities. This should be captured in your donor profiles, which realistically should be built over time, but it's never too soon to start. By segmenting or grouping your donor base, you can craft targeted, personalized messages that resonate with each group. Don't manually segment donors. Instead, save time and ensure accuracy by automating segmentation for personalization. Segment supporters by demographics such as generation or location, interests such as programs or campaigns, preferences such as giving method, and giving history such as timing or amount. This ensures that your appeals are more relevant, touching on specific aspects that matter to each donor, and increasingly the likelihood of a positive response.
And an example here for you, which we'll work on some examples for all these various strategies to help illustrate this for you guys. Here, what we're illustrating is that, like Tara mentioned, you can use automation to group donors automatically based on events such as donating to a campaign, let's say. This is one example from Giveffect, one of our embeddable donation forms. I'm sure many of you have been using or are interested in embeddable forms. They're certainly great for simplifying the giving process for online donors. Within any of these forms, whether embeddable or not, you can use data mapping and tracking, that's what we call it, to have values assigned automatically to either your donor records, the gift records themselves, within your database. So for example, in Giveffect, you can use appeal codes for your various campaigns, whether it's your Giving Tuesday campaigns, galas, last year's end of year fundraising, and so on and so forth. As folks make these donations, the segmentation is occurring automatically, right? Like Tara mentioned, don't have to do it manually, build it into your current processes. So as it happens automatically, now your team doesn't have to go back and spend all that time making those updates. Over time, you'll start to have a more and more robust donor profile. So as you start actually executing and practicing your segmentation strategies, it's built in to your existing tools in your tech stack. For instance, here, our lovely donor Wendell here, he was placed automatically by virtue of giving in this form into this group we called our 2023 end of year donors. in the future, I can run reports, take specific actions, perhaps such as emailing Wendell, maybe sending him a text, giving him a call, anything, of course, to continue cultivating that relationship. We mentioned that at the top. We'll want to emphasize this throughout our conversation today. It's really about having those meaningful touch points, building those relationships so that, again, given that current state of philanthropy we talked about, we can retain as many donors as possible and bring them into our organization. All righty. Next one here.
Great, thanks. So number 2 is predictive analytics and donor behavior. Predictive analytics powered by AI might sound complex, but it's like having a magic 8-ball for fundraising. I guess that kind of dates me. Just kidding, I'm not that old. By examining historical data, AI can forecast giving patterns and even identify potential major donors. Giveffect has a proprietary machine learning and predictive analytics tool called the Lab, which is actually built right into the platform and helps you identify who is most likely to give and when. Predictive analytics tools like Giveffect can help you identify where to put your time and energy using data. It's always best to make decisions using data. This type of tool is especially helpful leading up to and during year-end giving, when there's never enough time to focus your efforts.
Okay, so this is just one example of the lab, and you see in this graphic here, there are really 2 key contributing factors as Giveffect is generating this data for you. Average gift amount for each donor, and then their frequency of giving, of course, using those specific dates from those past donations. As you continue building these relationships and donor profiles over time, these predictive tools can inform how and when you appeal to various groups or types of donors. For instance, we see here Jack and Carl towards the top here, their estimated gift size for the next donation is much larger than some of the others on screen here. I can factor this in to my end of year fundraising strategy because maybe I now target them as major gift opportunities rather than folding them into, let's say, just my general appeal that I initially had planned for. So again, I'm using this data to my benefit. I'm trying to eliminate as much guesswork as possible and try to use this past behavior to forecast future behavior as much as possible. Now, we certainly know that you'll be using other types of data to inform these decisions, but tools like the lab can help fill in some gaps, eliminate that guesswork so that you aren't trying to, whether it's just guess off the top of your head or think back in the recesses of your mind or pull out the file cabinets with any of that info that you're using, or even crunching those numbers manually, right? Put away the calculator, put away the Excel spreadsheet. Use your existing tools as much as possible, right, to generate this info for you so you can get right into the decision-making and execution process for your strategies, for your team. Okay, now before we tee up this next strategy here, we actually want to pause and take a poll of all you fine folks here today with the following question. You should see that prompted here momentarily. Question, have you used generative AI to create content for your nonprofit? If you aren't sure what this means to you, think about tools like ChatGPT, for instance. That's just one example. So just simple yes or no. We will give folks a few moments to weigh in here. Very interested to see how this audience looks. Give folks maybe.
Wow, it's looking like the majority.
Okay.
Have you ChatGPT or a similar kind of Gen I tool? So that's really interesting.
There we go. We've got those results there. Okay, yeah, about 62%. Okay, excellent, guys. Well then, using that info, let's go ahead and get into that third strategy here. Tara, take it away.
Great. Well, with 62% of you using some generative AI for writing and content creation, I think that you're going to get a lot out of this, especially those who have not kind of dipped their toe in the water yet. But obviously you're here, so you want to learn more. So of course, up next, we have generative AI and content creation as our third practical strategy. So Gen AI streamlines the content creation process for all types of writing. Gen AI reduces manual content creation efforts, allowing nonprofits to focus on strategic planning and relationship building. So let the machines help you do what the machines can do, and this frees up more time to allow you to do what humans do best, which is the relationship building. Think of content created by Gen AI as a first draft and not the final draft. So even though it really does help our writing process, it still at this point in its evolution requires that human polish and human kind of overview to make sure that, just like Jack talked about during his myth busting section, it's not always accurate. It may not completely tell your story or use your specific tone of voice, and so that human touch is very necessary. Next slide. So here are just a few examples of the types of nonprofit content that can be created with Gen AI. We have end-of-year appeal letter, end-of-year email, social media calendar, social media post, grant proposal, and thank you notes. Of course, there's so much more you can do, but this is just to throw a couple ideas out there for you. All right, next slide. And there are so many Gen AI platforms available. Of course, I'm sure probably at least 99% of you who have expressed some interest in Gen AI have heard about ChatGPT because it's the one that's been in the news the most. So we have here ChatGPT, we have DALL-E, which is actually by OpenAI, which is the same company that is behind ChatGPT, but DALL-E is their image generative AI tool. We have Google's Bard, Bing Chat for Microsoft, Midjourney, AlphaCode, GitHub Copilot, and Adobe Firefly. I've also included Giveffect's AI Writer, which we'll touch on in a little bit because it's specific to nonprofits using Giveffect and helps generate nonprofit-specific content and writing. Some of these are text only, while others create images too. However, little warning here, Gen AI generated images open up a whole new world. And so I personally recommend, or what I choose to follow for myself rather, and maybe you'd like to do the same, is actually staying away from Gen AI generated images just for now. Companies and organizations may run into sticky situations when it comes to images and IP. And this is until, like Jack was saying earlier, the law catches up with the technology. We don't know where they're sourcing aspects of these images to create new and unique images, and we want to make sure we're not infringing on other people's IP. So that's why I'm having fun playing with it and experimenting for personal use to continue to learn the technology, but I have not quite used it for Giveffect or for any other kind of commercial or official use.
All right. So just a kind of a direct comparison here between the AI Writer and ChatGPT, again, just one of the more popular examples out there, just to give you all a little bit more of an idea, a summary breakdown. For instance, well, actually, and again, we'll see in some examples on screen here in a moment. The AI Writer, it's built into the Giveffect platform, right? So we don't need a separate username and password, separate tool, separate app, separate app on the desktop to pull up and work through. So eliminating some hassle there. Don't need to toggle back and forth, and it is trained specifically on your nonprofit needs as part of what you enter in. Versus ChatGPT, again, we'll kind of break it down with more examples further. You can do maybe a bit more, but you do need to be skilled in another term we'll throw at you called prompt engineering. What does that mean? It's really just the idea of knowing what to ask GPT for, right? Because again, it's gonna give you whatever you tell it. So being able to add context to your requests, knowing what information, whether about what you're trying to generate or why, certain components to include, tone of voice, like Tara mentioned, for instance, are all things that you'll have to think about if you're going to get that best possible product. But also, like Tara mentioned, you don't have to have that fully built out, thought out process. Again, we'll go to some examples in a moment. Just final piece on this slide to mention, the current, or at least one of the current versions of ChatGPT, version 3.5, it is free, a little bit less accurate, and ChatGPT 4 is now available with a paid subscription, right? So paid subscriptions versus other native tools, obviously another, not just specific to Giveffect, of course, but for any tools out there, certainly a trade-off that you and your team will want to keep in mind with any of these kinds of tools. So we really have kind of three different scenarios for you. The first being, or I guess I should say, approaches that you can consider taking with generative content AI, or we'll just say Gen AI for short. Example one, you could simply ask vague and simple questions. But if you do that, very likely you aren't going to get what you want. It won't maybe speak as much to your nonprofit's mission or vision, or certain components you typically include. Coming back to tone of voice again, that human touch is obviously a humongous piece. So if you aren't sure how to fashion that more detailed prompt, you may want to ask just simple information gathering style questions. For instance, the example we have here, what components should I even include in my end of year fundraising appeal? Maybe we're starting at that really base level, because again, like Tara mentioned earlier, we do not have to come to these tools only when we want that pristine final product. In fact, it's probably going to be even more useful for you in your day-to-day, for any member of your team, to just establish that base level, get past that writer's block, and even when we mentioned productivity earlier, these types of tools can even be helpful for newer employees that don't have as much track record or experience, whether at your organization or frankly in the nonprofit industry in general. So it could be another tool just in the toolkit they can use to continue to educate themselves and learn. Versus second approach here of what we mentioned a moment ago, that more detailed prompt. And so you're seeing just an instance here of, ChatGPT, you are a nonprofit employee working in a development department. Craft an end of year fundraising appeal intended to be sent via email, include, and then it goes on, right, for as long as you want. But again, these are pieces you're gonna have to specify, because otherwise ChatGPT is gonna start to guess and fill in the blanks for you that you don't provide for it. Now again, this approach can be a little bit more intimidating depending on where you're coming from, because again, you may not be sure what to include in that prompt. Now you can iterate, but that's time out of your day that you're losing. And so again, not just specific to Giveffect, you're seeing just the AI writer here off to the side, but in other tools, there can be those out there that try to help organize your prompt for you. So to kind of walk through all the components of this one here, what are we writing? Right? In this case, we're choosing an email, but as Tara mentioned on one of the previous slides, there's lots of different content out there. Maybe we're thinking a blog, maybe a social media post, maybe we're going direct mail. And everything in between. There are even tools out there, right, in terms of just a simple rephrase of whatever you're typing. Maybe you just wanted to do a spell check, things of that nature. Next, what's your target audience, right? Over here, back in the ChatGPT prompt, you have to tell it what that audience is. Whereas here, we're prompting you, you could leave this field blank, but this is again to help you figure out, who is my target audience? Let's plug that in. You can add as many values as you like, comma separate them. There's that tone of voice, that human element that you can add in as well. Again, no limitations here. Depending on your tool, you may be able to generate content in languages other than English, obviously for accessibility purposes, and depending on the community you're coming from, obviously a big help there to have those pieces worked in. And then even, the length. Is this maybe a shorter message we're getting out, medium, long? Can maybe get more specific from there. But again, just giving you the ideas of what to prompt rather than you having to think off the top of your head. Because again, maybe you've never done this before. You don't even know where to start. And then to wrap it up, what are those key messages I want to convey? Maybe what do I have up to this point, right? If I've got that writer's block, let me get in at least what I've gotten thus far. And any other additional information and context. Again, whether it's for your nonprofit's mission, any built-in, let's say, events that go along with this appeal as we reach the end of the year. Obviously, every nonprofit is different in terms of what you're going to be highlighting, or maybe those impact stories you're going to be telling as you weave those in to your various appeals. So I hope this was helpful for you, just to kind of get a picture of, with the tools out there, knowing how some can frame that prompt for you, or if you're starting a little bit more from scratch, maybe some more of that info gathering phase, some different approaches for you all to consider here today.
Yeah, just to add something real quick there that I was thinking about while you're speaking is that prompt engineering is going to become a skill that we're all going to need to hone in on for the future. Because whether you're using ChatGPT, which requires more of that engineering on your end, or using AI Writer, for example, that kind of lays out those fill in the blank fields to help you think through what you need to ask for. It's going to be necessary to ask for specific things that you need or are looking for. Otherwise, you're just going to get that generic response back. And that's not going to be so helpful. And you want whatever you're creating or the ideas you're generating to be specific to your needs, your audience. So something for us all to continue to work on. It also,
Absolutely.
oh yeah, it also kind of makes me think about Google, right? I mean, I can't think of a time really now without Google, but when Google first started, right, the search that you put in to the query box, how you phrased it, certain keywords you use is really what determined what Google would serve up. And sometimes it didn't always answer your question, right? Or it didn't provide you with the information that you were looking for. And over time, I'm sure everyone here, because everyone's now experienced using Google, right? Over time, your searches became better and better, and also Google continued to evolve in order to serve up the responses that answered your question or was the information you're looking for. So I think we can kind of compare this prompt engineering to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I figured if we would have asked the poll, right, if you guys use Google, hopefully at least maybe 100%, right, or maybe you have a different right search engine of choice. But no,
Right.
excellent, excellent added
Same
context.
goes for Bing
Exactly,
and
exactly.
many others. Yeah.
Okay. So moving forward here, our next strategy, this actually really it works in a lot of the pieces we've already mentioned here today. The personalization elements, segmentation, automation, the Gen AI writing, and other future communications. Automating and personalizing your nonprofit appeals. What you'll want to do is use technology to help streamline those processes as you reach out while you tailor your message. At the end of the day, we need what resonates for your folks, whether in terms of what your nonprofit does, or even thinking about the individual interests and let's say giving history of your donors. So it's we've said it a couple of times here today. We'll want to hammer it home here that when you're building this info over time, these pieces, these strategies obviously are key throughout that process, not just at the beginning for the very first time. It's certainly an iterative process. And so this approach, will increase efficiency as you're starting to automate those repetitive tasks. Again, you're getting that time back in your day. You're ensuring as much relevance as possible when crafting your messages, which again, that are reflecting your donors' preferences and past interactions. The result is you'll have a more engaging and effective fundraising strategy that connects with your supporters on a deeper level. You certainly know them best. And since we are talking end of year fundraising strategies, just an example again to help illustrate here for us today. This is just a fairly typical holiday season email appeal. Now there are three components within this that I want to flag for us. One is this was crafted using some AI generated content. Now we made some tweaks, right? Because again, in a lot of cases, you'll certainly be making tweaks at the end of the day, right? You may not certainly take the entire finished product. Second, we have what we call our dynamic personalization. In our case, what this is just a highlight for us here on screen, the different replacement variables that you're including in your email messages. We say replacement variables. You may know these as merge fields in terms of the tools that you use, right? Not just the first name, last name, address, obviously that helpful contact info, but depending on your tools, they may have other variables available to you that can be dynamic. What do we mean by that? In this case, the in-text appeal, that ask that we're prompting folks with as they review this message, this variable is saying greater of latest donation or $50. What do we mean by that? This is the value that prompts in this field is going to be specific to the person opening the message, right? So if you're sending to even hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of folks, each person may see a different item here. Why is that, right? Because in this particular case, what we're telling the system to do is using the data that we have, again, using what we have, not just trying to do some guesswork, is take me as an example. I'm one of the donors opening this message, and maybe the last time I gave 6 months ago, I gave $100 bucks, or let's say even 1,000. We're establishing a baseline of 50. In this case, since my last gift was $1,000, that's the appeal that I'm going to get here, right? It's specific to me versus maybe Tara here is another donor on this list, or maybe a prospective donor. Maybe she hasn't even given yet in the past. Since there's no past history to go off of Tara, it'll simply leave that base ask in this case of $50. So again, that's what we mean by dynamic. It's using the data you've already fed into your database over time as you've built these relationships so that you can be as strategic as possible, right? Why would we certainly add someone with a higher giving capacity for a lower amount when that ask could have been higher, right? And we're bringing more in to support our mission at the end of the day. And then third, in this final piece here, what we call our smart donate button. What we mean by this is that, of course, as folks click to go to that giving form, that checkout page will also be personalized. How exactly? In many tools, I'm sure you guys are familiar, you can craft those donation tiers for folks to choose from. And then, of course, they could type in any other amount aside from that, of course. Let's say I have example donation tiers of, a fairly straightforward, maybe 10 bucks, 50 bucks, 100 bucks. Again, looking to a previous donor like myself, maybe someone who has an average gift amount over time of around $500. When I open this email and click to donate, those donation tiers actually scale up to match my average gift amount. So instead of 10, 50, and 100 as my options, maybe it shows 100, 500, 1,000. Again, so similar in terms of this replacement variable, but obviously much more actionable because they're now engaging the giving form. And so just some ways of how this leads to that greater personalization. It's automated, right? What you're not having to do is to segment your folks and then have 6 different appeals on your 6 different giving buckets, because that's the best you can do with your current tools. Try to look for technology out there that can, again, this is that automation piece we've spoken to a number of times today. All right. Last but not least here is that engagement and retention. Again, coming back to those relationships. Even with the most innovative technologies available, giving does boil down to those relationships you're building. Given the current state of philanthropy, this stresses the importance of those relations, building those connections, and you can combine these elements we've been talking about today, right? These certainly aren't one-offs that you could use. You can combine them together and create those targeted retention strategies, which include whether it's maybe items such as workflows. We'll actually speak to in another example in a moment. Or even automatically sending out future communications, right? Things like sending folks on email journeys you may be familiar with. Now, I'm sure a lot of us are maybe more familiar on just one example, the consumer retail side, right? We bought that item in the cart, and then now that company knows what to send us in the weeks and months ahead based off of that interest. We can, there are tools out there that will allow us as folks in the nonprofit space to utilize these same strategies at the end of the day. So the example we'll actually be using here is starting with a LIBUT report. Let me shift gears here. And let me start here. For those who aren't familiar, LIBUT acronym simply stands for last year, but unfortunately not this year. Now, LIBUT rolls off the tongue a little bit better than LIBUNTY, but you get the idea, right? These are folks who have given, whether it's last year, maybe even other years, but not yet this year. So when we think about that retention piece, obviously that's extremely helpful information to know. This report centered on identifying retention can show me who those potential donors are that have yet to give this year, right? I don't want to let those folks fall off the map, drop off the table, and I want to make sure that they get this appeal as we get towards the end of the year. So let's say this is my strategy. I have my initial email campaign that I've created with my first ask to reach my end of year fundraising appeal. And then based off running that report, I then apply my donor segmentations, okay? So maybe I put these folks into a group that I call initial libels for email appeals. Obviously, the verbiage is up to you guys in your own tools. So that as I'm then implementing that segmentation strategy, I can then start to insert various tracking codes into my giving page that then knock folks off of that list, so that I'm not asking people that second, third, fourth time if they've given. Again, that gets to this automated piece right here at the very end, where you're not having to manually remove folks from these lists. In other words, you're not having to go week by week and say, okay, who gave this past week? Okay, let me take them off that email so that we don't bug them again with another ask, right? That's all manual work. We can eliminate that. And so you can build it in, whether it's via these tracking codes on your giving page, setting up the workflows inside your technology. So again, you get that time back in your day. All right, and then going forward, let's say Tara is one of the folks, one of those Libunt donors, and she gives at that first appeal. And then via some workflow automation, just another one of the tools that our platform provides, but many others do as well, is now we know that email journey to send Tara down, right? What are maybe some upcoming events that we want to flag her on? Because we know she's given, she clearly is demonstrating some interest in the organization. Let's leverage that. Let's not let her wither on the vine, so to speak, over the months and years, right? She came to us. Let's engage in that relationship together. So all important retention pieces that, as we're seeing here, you're weaving together, okay, in this wonderful picture. Okay, let's start to summarize a little bit. Tara, take it away.
Great. And before I get into the checklist, I just want to remind everyone that we'll be doing Q&A shortly. So if you do have any questions, please do add it in using that question tool as part of GoToWebinar. Great. So like we mentioned previously, this is just the beginning of the AI revolution. We are all still learning. So don't feel like you're behind if you haven't started just yet. You've taken a really great first step if this is your first step joining in on this webinar. All right, so truly use this time to try new things and experiment with different tools. And like we mentioned also throughout today's webinar, is that AI and its uses are continuously evolving. So you will need to attend webinars such as this one, read articles for the technologies that you do choose to use. They should be sharing different updates along the way. So, stay on top of that and make sure that you're using those tools in all the ways that it can be used. So here's your checklist to use for AI for fundraising success this year during giving season. So first up, evaluate your technology options and build your tech stack. You also want to build your donor profiles and segment. Again, hopefully you've been building your donor profiles throughout the year, but of course it's never too late to start. So make sure if you haven't started already, set yourselves up to build your donor profiles to prepare you both for this year's giving season as well as going into next year. And you're going to want to segment or group those donors so that you can very easily segment for personalization. Use predictive analytics to understand and forecast donor behavior. Of course, you're going to be short on time, so this is a really great way for you to really decide how to allocate your time. And use Gen AI to write and create content quicker. Remember, it's just the first draft, not the final draft, so do make sure to read and analyze prior to using. So don't just generate something on any AI tool and send it out. Please read it first, make sure it makes sense for you and for your organization. Fifth is you're going to want to personalize and automate messaging to create meaningful touch points at scale. Again, you're going to want to send out lots of emails and text messages, but you're not going to be able to do that manually one by one. Of course, you want it to be personalized. So finding the right tool, whether it's Giveffect or something else that you're currently using to really help you automate that, is going to be really important. And lastly, employ donor engagement and retention strategies to build meaningful long-term connections with your donors. when year-end fundraising ends, next year's fundraising begins. So really the goal here is building those long-term relationships, not just, hi, we're here, we'd like you to make a donation. You have to build that over time. Great. So now, again, get in any of your last questions. We'll take those in just a moment. But before we get into questions, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. And if you'd like to learn more about Giveffect and how to leverage our 10-in-1 nonprofit solution, including AI tools for year-end fundraising success, or really any time of the year, I encourage you to visit our website, and you can also sign up for a demo using that QR code. Just scan that right there on the screen. Let us know you'd like to learn more, and we can schedule a time to connect with you. Also, we have a very special offer for the nonprofit Tech for Good community, which we almost never do. We're actually going to be giving $500 off a subscription if you sign up by the end of this year. So by December 31st, 2023, and you can use the promo code NPTFG, lots of letters there, 500, and we would be excited to work with you. So we're gonna leave this up on the screen, but now we'll also take your questions. So let's see, let's take a look here.
Yeah, I think with some good ones.
Great. Let's see. So let's start out with Erica Woods. She asked, which of these platforms are free or have discounts for nonprofits? So that's a very good question. We'll answer this in a couple of different ways. So we have the generative AI tools and the AI, like predictive analytics tools, and then we also have nonprofit technologies such as like Giveffect or CRM or email marketing. And so there is both free tools, tools you need to pay for, and a combination of the two, which many do give discounts for nonprofits. So Giveffect, for example, was built specifically for nonprofits, and so our pricing is representative of that. Of course, you have to keep in mind that just because something is free doesn't mean it's truly free. There can be lots of add-ons and hidden costs, as well as additional costs needed to customize to be able to use it, as well as time is also a resource. So they're just something to keep in mind. But there are both AI platforms and nonprofit tech solutions that are very affordable at different price points. Anything else to add there, Jack?
I mean, really just to emphasize from my perspective, right, being on the client success team, is I've certainly heard from plenty of folks, and even frankly in other roles too, that for any nonprofit, cost can be extremely prohibitive, right? It's there really isn't a lot of overhead to work with, right? We know this, it comes with the territory. And so just keep in mind, I know it can be tough to generate that kind of buy-in among decision makers at your organization. Those can be tough conversations. We build that in to our process. We want not just the users of Giveffect to join these demonstrations. We want your decision makers as well, right? To help get an idea of what's the return. Right? Obviously, that's a really important question. What's the return? And so, just one piece I'll end with this is a lot of teams think they can get away with, I'm getting the benefits of a free tool, but just like Tara said, it may be hampering your abilities in terms of time because the functionality isn't as built out because it's free. Now, that's a trade-off all of you guys are going to make at the end of the day. But don't treat that as an excuse maybe to not try and have those conversations. And get those internal deliberations going at your organization. Again, I think the most succinct way to put it, like Tara said, is free doesn't mean the best. So, okay.
It could cost you in other ways.
Yeah.
And along those lines, we did receive a few other questions around the cost of Giveffect's AI Writer. So Currently, we're in beta with AI Writer, and so it's complementary with all tiers. Soon we will be taking it out of beta and also continuing to evolve it. So there may be a cost associated at some of the lower tiers, but it will remain included at some of the higher tiers. So stay tuned for specifics on that. And you can only use AI Writer if you're using Giveffect. So that's not an open platform such as like ChatGPT where anyone can just sign up. We did also get another question asking if Giveffect is free. It's not free, but we do have several tiers of pricing that is based off of your need. You may be able to find the right tier for you. Also, something that we launched just this last year was our Giveffect grant program, where we actually provide for free our technology along with our help for certain selected nonprofits who meet certain criteria. So if you are interested in applying for our grant program, please do check out our website. The next grant program that will be, or the next grant cohort that will be opened will be in 2024. But we've been working with some amazing grantees over the last year, and soon we'll share some of their successes more with the nonprofit community. So also stay tuned for that. Great, let's see here.
Maybe one here, Tara. I don't know if we'd want to add anything here at the end. I'll leave it to you, but the question here from Karen on what to watch out for while using AI tools. I think this is a very fun example. Glad that someone on your team, Karen, was able to catch it, right? Karen writes, an AI suggested actually using alt tags for one of their top competitors, actually, even in their own photos. And so, she's saying, thank goodness someone who knew what to look for spotted that. Now, what I'll say, and Tara, please feel free to chime in, is maybe if you weren't able to join at the top of today's webinar, of course, we'll be sending out that recording, right? So you could certainly stay tuned there. But we did bust some myths around that in terms of what to look out for. But Tara, if anything in particular you'd like to flag.
Yeah, so I would agree that please do not generate content using any kind of AI tool and automatically just like upload it into another tool like a social media scheduling tool, or just copy and paste and uses your alt tags without having someone read it. I think that it's so important. One of the ways I like to think about content generation too with generative AI tools is that instead of me as one person being able to maybe generate one piece of content a week, I can now multiply myself in a sense, and I can generate things so much quicker, but I'm still going to read every aspect of it, and I'm going to view that as a first draft and make those tweaks before sharing that with a single person outside of our company. So I definitely encourage you to have someone that double checks every single piece of writing or content to make it more specific to your needs, and also check for those errors. Because any AI tool only knows right now what's out there and is not 100% accurate, as we had talked about. So you definitely don't want to use your competitors in your alt tags. One other thing to think about too is there are so many AI tools out there and new ones popping up every day. I definitely recommend looking into the company because you want to make sure that any information that you're feeding it, and even creating like a username and password, you want to make sure it's a credible company and not any kind of scam or any company that you wouldn't want to be associated with. So make sure to do your due diligence there. Also, when it comes to any kind of paid subscription, not prescription, subscription, you're going to want to make sure that if you're paying them, especially, that this company is going to be around for a bit. With so many AI companies popping up left and right, you want to make sure that they have staying power. So that's something else to consider.
Excellent. I love this question here because maybe we didn't catch that myth earlier. And actually, I'll kind of do a 2-for-1 here. I know someone else had asked if this webinar will be sent out when we're done. We certainly will be sharing those recordings, so no worries there. But the question I wanted to tag from Ginger here is, can you use ChatGPT for predictive analytics? This gets into, we very much recommend not including donor information in tools like ChatGPT. We certainly don't want any kind of compromises of information. We don't want other parties perhaps to be using that data in, I'll put it plainly, non-ideal ways. Short answer, no. I definitely wouldn't recommend ChatGPT for those predictive analytics. Now, that being said, though, you could consider something like this. Of course, do your own added research so that it fits the best needs of your team. But I have seen certain instances where folks are using anonymized giving data, because if we're just talking about amounts, other numbers, data like that, that's not associated with any particular name, email, any other kind of identifying information, that could certainly be something you take a look at. But again, if it's going to be tied to any kind of personal information, definitely stay away from that.
And to touch on that just a little bit more, with ChatGPT, there are integrations with Excel and Google Sheets, and so you are able to bring in data in CSVs, in tables, that can help you analyze the data. But just like Jack was saying, do not attach any kind of identifying information, because again, like we talked about before, we don't have full disclosure on how secure ChatGPT is, especially for a platform you're not paying for. You don't have those terms of service that can guarantee certain aspects of security. And so I would be very cautious. But if you're just looking for it to help you analyze maybe some projections, that might be helpful there. I believe just this Monday, ChatGPT released an enterprise version that's supposed to be more secure. I don't know all the details on that. Of course, that is going to be associated with a higher price tag. And so that's just something to think about.
Awesome. And it looks like, but maybe the last question here, unless Tara, you've caught something, is another great question. Recalling the year-end example that we showed with that holiday newsletter, and how AI was incorporated into generating that. And so the question, if all of us are using AI to generate content, are we worried that many users will start using very similar content? Tara, maybe you start off with this one.
Yeah, I think that's where prompting becomes so important, right? Because if you just write a prompt, if you just engineer a prompt, write me an end of year appeal letter, you're going to get back an incredibly generic response. And would someone else asking that question get a very similar response? Yeah, I'd say that's likely. I'm not sure as far as like how unique every response is, but when you ask a generic prompt, you're going to get a generic response. And also think about your audience. Your audience doesn't want to receive a generic appeal. They want to know specific to your organization, how will their donation make a difference? Or what are you specifically working on that their donation could make that difference? So think about it from your audience's perspective, and how can you share information that makes them take action, and a generic appeal is not going to.
No, all great points. I think I certainly agree. So I'd maybe even flip that question on its head. That I've certainly seen many instances myself, and I'm sure you all have as well, that even with non-AI generated content, a lot of the same verbiage and language can be used, right? So that just gets back to what Tara was referencing as far as, for lack of a better word, vague language. So it gets back to that prompt engineering. It gets back to, you get out what you put in. So if you want it to be as intricate and unique to your nonprofit as possible, that's stuff you're gonna have to build in to these prompts and help shape that.
Right. And I think too, now is the time to experiment with that. You have a little bit of time before it's crunch time for your year-end appeals to go out, you can kind of play with that a little bit and see what works for you, play with different types of prompting, whether you're using a more open prompting such as ChatGPT or a little bit more guided such as with AI Writer, and play with tone of voice. You could play with length. You could play with specific updates that you're including in your appeal, and see what comes out. And of course, that human touch point of always making sure that your AI generated content is your first draft, not your final draft. So no matter what, read it, make some human touches, and it'll definitely still help you save time. I think one of the worst things with creating content is when you're staring at that blank white page on your screen, right? So I think too, using generative AI to create content or any kind of writing really helps you get started, because gosh, getting that first sentence on your page and figuring out your direction is, you know, the toughest part of writing.
Certainly can be. Alrighty, folks.
So we are at 2:01. We're 1 minute over. So again, thank you all for joining today. If anyone has questions that we were not able to get to, or you think of it later, please do reach out to us. Of course, schedule a demo to learn more about the technology itself and see different uses and how other nonprofits have used Giveffect to increase their fundraising, as well as other aspects of their nonprofit.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.